Half the running backs in the NFL play for a different team. So it's about time that we actually go through and re-rank these players. Starting off tier one, I'm actually not even going to include any running backs. We're going to go 101, 102. Yes, we're going to include rookie picks in here just to give you an idea of if you wanted to go through and buy any of these guys, sell any of these guys, what price you should be looking at. These are super flex rookie picks. If it was a one quarterback format, obviously we are not having this amount of rookie picks this high, but I would rather have Marvin Harrison Jr. over any running back in Dynasty right now. Now, going over to our next tier, Bijan Robinson jumps up as our RB1. Now, previously, I had Jahmyr Gibbs as the RB1 in a full PPR format. I just wanted to get confirmation that you were going to have good quarterback play in Atlanta. You have the best free agent or the best quarterback available in the NFL this offseason in Kirk Cousins going over to the Atlanta Falcons. While we should expect the passing volume to be way up in this offense, we know that Bijan Robinson is a very capable receiving back out of the backfield as well. We also know to hook 'em horns and that I met the guy. So of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased here. Jahmyr Gibbs afterwards. Gibbs, full BBR format. Obviously, you should be in love with him. I mean, he comes in and not only does he prove himself as a receiver immediately at the NFL level, but at the same time, he actually takes the red zone role from David Montgomery at the end of the year. Yes, Montgomery's still going to be involved, but if David Montgomery's just going to be getting the carries between the 20s, those are the empty calorie touches that we don't necessarily really care about. And honestly, I would rather have David Montgomery getting a carry at the 50-yard line, at the 60. It doesn't really matter as long as Gibbs is getting the receiving work and the usage in the goal line, because those are the high value touches. We're going to include the 103 here. 103 gives you your choice between, say, Neighbors, probably not, really May or Daniels. Dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go 104. I mean, if it's a super flex league, I'd still maybe rather have May or Daniels over our next guy in Breece Hall. Breece Hall is going to be coming in here at 7. 100%. I understand if you're in a redraft format, you want to make an argument for Breece over Bijan, make an argument for Breece over Gibbs. I think go back and forth, blah, 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 your personal preference. From a dynasty perspective, Breece Hall was drafted a year before those other two running backs. Not only was he drafted the year before, but he was a second round pick as well, so he does not have the 5th-year option. So if you were looking at the longevity of these RBs, given their contract situations, you have a lot more security with both Bijan Robinson as well as Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's why I'm going to view them a tier ahead of Breece Hall. But these are the big three running backs in Dynasty right now. If you are going to go out there and trade for a running back to both be hyper productive in the short term, while at the same time not sacrificing long-term value, really, it's a list of 3 players that you can count on, and that is Bijan, Gibbs, and Breece Hall. We'll throw the 105 here as well. That's going to be the end of the tier for the rookie picks. Now, going down to our next tier, this is where things get very difficult. And I would say there's almost a double tier gap between these spots. We will go Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey with our next 2 slots. Now, keep in mind, Jonathan Taylor just signed this extension, and he was only drafted in 2020. So, I mean, he signs the extension a little bit early. We know the entire fiasco last year that caused me to lose a lot of money on Underdog. But nonetheless, if we are looking at Jonathan Taylor, should be a very efficient running back running alongside Anthony Richardson this next year. We know that those rushing quarterbacks are going to give that extra efficiency bump for running backs when they're running between the tackles. The issue is if Anthony Richardson takes rushing touchdowns at the goal line. The issue is if Anthony Richardson doesn't check the ball down as often as what we've seen with stationary quarterbacks in years past for Jonathan Taylor. But pretty good news in that Zach Moss is going over to Cincinnati. So I'm definitely drafting Jonathan Taylor from a redraft perspective. I'll be all over him. But from a dynasty perspective, obviously just a little bit older than those guys at the top. And I'd say really any running back beyond those big 3 are only for contending teams, including our next guy, Christian McCaffrey. If you're a rebuilding roster, you have no business with any of these running backs. Please go out there and sell them for the 105. I mean, of course, if you get to the 104, 103, it's a no-brainer. CMC, running back 1 in redraft this next season, but he was drafted back in 2017. This is someone that while he's pretty young in that 2017 draft, he's still very old for running back standards. There's nothing that he can do this next season to increase in dynasty fantasy football value, which is why he's the perfect example of a piece that only fits a contending roster. We'll throw the 106 and then the 2025 early to mid first and 107 in this tier as well. And then we're going to go Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams looks like he may rise ahead of these rookie picks in this tier. So far, he's a winner of the offseason in that he dodges pretty much every running back that you have to worry about in free agency. Now, all he has to do is dodge the NFL draft. I want to reiterate, I do not expect the Los Angeles Rams to go out there and take Jonathan Brooks and replace Kyren Williams. No, Kyren Williams is a running back that was so damn good last year, better than I ever thought he could be. Someone I didn't even have ranked inside our top 200 rankings on flogfantasy.com, which is very embarrassing, and you better believe we have that fixed now. But what I could potentially be worried about with Kyren Williams is not that they take someone to replace him, take someone to be the starting running back over him, but they take another guy just so they have depth at the position. And instead of using Kyren Williams as prime Christian McCaffrey and giving him 100% of the snaps, instead maybe he takes a step backwards and sees 70% of the backfield. They take just an average running back. They take Braylon Allen in round 3 or round 4, and then all of a sudden it's Kyren Williams running back 1, Braylon Allen running back 2, but it's a little more of a committee. Now, if he dodges that in the NFL draft and he looks to be a bell cow yet again going into this next season, I will tell you right now he's going to move up in these rankings, and of course we will keep those updated for y'all. Going over to our next tier, we're going to go Devon Achane at 15. With Achane, this is a running back that comes out and is the second running back that weighed less than 190 pounds that we've seen over the past 10 years to actually put up an RB1 finish. Typically, you're never seeing running backs do it at this size, and the reason for that is they just can't handle the volume without getting hurt. You can't see Devon Achane or running backs of this ilk seeing 20, 25 touches at a game and doing that through the course of the entire season. Now, Devon Achane did not have to do that this past year, and instead he said, well, you know what? F it. I'll just be the most efficient player in the NFL. I will give you more on a per touch basis than any running back has over the past 5 seasons. Now, there are 2 ways this can go. Well, one, we'll just say for a damn fact, knowing how math works, unless Achane's on pace to be the best running back of all time, I will tell you right now the efficiency is going to come dramatically down. Now, Devon Achane could still very easily be a running back 1 in fantasy if while that efficiency comes down, his volume goes up. If he goes from a running back that's the best in the NFL on a per touch basis off of 10 touches a game, and instead he's pretty good or very good on a per touch basis, just not leaps and bounds better than the next guy, but he sees 20 touches a game, he can be just as good as he was last year, if not better. But the issue is we just haven't seen a running back at his size ever do that at the NFL level. That's not to say that it can't ever happen, but y'all know I am one to look at historical data. But the size data point is something that is definitely coming in question way more than it did in years past, where it looks like it matters less and less. Travis Etienne will be our next guy. With Etienne, they bring back like Dearness Johnson. I said this before, I'll say it again. When you see those signings way down the list, like Dearness Johnson going back to Jacksonville, it doesn't matter for the starting running back there. It doesn't matter for Travis Etienne. I would make the argument it's almost a good thing in that it secures him from not having to worry about Jonathan Brooks, not having to worry about Trey Benson coming to Jacksonville, because the coaching staff views the depth chart as a well-rounded room at the running back position. We'll throw the 108 in this tier as well. 108 is going to be like Brian Thomas Jr., JJ McCarthy, depending on how things end up. Now, jumping down to our next tier, this is where we are going to begin to see some of these signings. We are going to go Saquon Barkley at 18. Now, with Barkley, I just hopped in Underdog Best Ball Draft to see where he is going. And he is going at the 1-2 turn. I've heard a lot of people on live streams just getting freaking pumped. Completely understand why, right? I mean, because ultimately this is a running back that's going from one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL over the past few seasons to a team that's had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL over the past few years. So if that happens, naturally, you should be excited. Now, like I said, I am going to be just a little bit hesitant to go out there and claim that Saquon Barkley is a top 3 running back locked and loaded now, because one, Jalen Hurts may steal some of those rushing touchdowns at the goal line. And 2, given the fact that he's playing alongside a quarterback that's going to run the ball, what you may end up seeing is just a lower checkdown rate overall. And a running back like Derrick Henry, that lower checkdown rate with Lamar is not going to matter as much, because Derrick Henry doesn't win based off him going out there and being a great receiving back. Derrick Henry wins by just touching the ball 20 plus times a game, carrying it. And if Lamar can boost his efficiency, it doesn't really matter that he's not going to get targeted out of the backfield, because he wasn't anyway. But if Barkley has his receiving volume come down, his market share numbers in the red zone come down just a bit, I think the high value looks for Saquon Barkley may come down. The efficiency from a per touch perspective may go up, however, just given the fact that it's a much better offense than it was previously. I do want to reiterate, the only team that you want Saquon Barkley on is going to be a team that you are a contender, not a rebuilder. Of course, if you don't know if you're a contender or a rebuilder, I'd be happy to check out your team. If you're not already, join the flock. You can find the link in the description, find in the comment section. Join the flock with code FLOCK. Yours truly will break down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team in a podcast. Plus, you'll get all of our Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings, not only mine, everybody you watch on YouTube pretty much, our Dynasty Trade Calculator, our Dynasty Trade Finder, free week trial. Find all the links down below. But we'll go Kenneth Walker at 19. Kenneth Walker, very consistent ranking. I don't really see him changing much through the course of the offseason because he already had the competition get added in, right? I mean, you already have Zach Charbonnet in there, so it's priced in. We're not having to worry about another running back coming over to Seattle. Charbonnet is going to definitely get used as a receiver. I'm worried that this coaching staff doesn't necessarily have the allegiance to Kenneth Walker as maybe Pete Carroll did. So I don't know. It's some give and some take. I'm not worried about Kenneth Walker's value going down from this point forward. And I would feel comfortable investing in a both Walker as well as Charbonnet. It just comes down to what you believe of the offense. And keep in mind, he's not really going to be involved too much as a receiver. We're going to go with the 109 here. 109 is like Brian Thomas Jr. range. Maybe if like Adonai Mitchell, Xavier, where one of those guys find themselves in a perfect landing spot, they get pushed up. And then our next two guys, James Cook, Rachaad White. James Cook, Rachaad White could end up moving up these rankings and jump the 109, maybe move to a tier above if they dodge the NFL draft. They've done a great job of dodging free agency, right? Rachaad White, yes, gets like Chase Edmonds going over to his backfield, but very similar to what we were talking about with Travis Etienne and Dearness Johnson. I don't really care about that. And if anything, I think it kind of keeps them safe where we are not going to have to, we're less concerned about like Jonathan Brooks or some real competition going there. Now, dropping down to our next year, we're going to go 110, the mid to late first, 111. And we're going to be going with Josh Jacobs at 26. With Jacobs, I'm not going to lie to you, this is a dumb ranking. I'm going to have to move Josh Jacobs to the tier above. I mean, if you are looking at Jacobs, he gets the contract that guarantees that he's going to have a starting job for the next few years. Not only is he going to have the starting job, but he's a lot younger than you'd expect. I mean, he was only 20 years old coming out of Alabama in that 2019 draft class. So it's reckless to have him behind the late first round picks in that he has the guaranteed starting job. Nothing in an NFL draft is going to happen and take that away from him. He's young and productive. We've seen it time and time again. So I think we have to have him next to James Cook and Rachaad White. I want to reiterate, very similar to all these running backs. Pretty much every single running back on this list, maybe outside of Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs. If you are a rebuilding team, we should probably be looking to sell. If you could sell Josh Jacobs for the 109 and you're a rebuilding team in a super flex league, I go ahead and I probably make that move. Now, of course, in your one quarterback format, the 109 is worth a lot less. So do not do that there. Now, going over to our next RB, we will look at Isaiah Pacheco. With Pacheco, another running back that can move up after the NFL draft. I think that he could jump the 110, jump the 111. It is interesting that while he's not necessarily a great receiving back, he had more usage in that area this past season. I'm not going to be giving him the same premium that you would give James Cook, that you would give Rachaad White, because I feel like Isaiah Pacheco and James Cook have proven about the same amount for their respective teams through the first 2 years of their NFL careers. If we're looking at James Cook and Rachaad White, one, they are slightly better receivers out of the backfield, so I think that gives them a bump in the PPR format. And two, they have slightly more invested into them. James Cook was a round 2 pick. Rachaad White was a round 3 pick. These were day 2 options. Isaiah Pacheco was a day 3 option. Now, of course, this isn't the end of the world. I'm not making a massive gap between these players, but I do think the receiving ability as well as the team investment into both of them does make it where we can separate them by a tier. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go 112. Then we are going to be going with Tony Pollard at 29. I've seen some people in the comment section saying, oh, Tony Pollard going over to Tennessee is a good thing for Tajay Spears. Tyjae Spears can now learn from Tony Pollard. Tyjae Spears was destined to be a committee running back anyway, so it's a good thing. Tyjae Spears was not priced as if he was a committee or backup running back a month ago. Tyjae Spears was priced as if he was going to be the starter. Obviously, there was a lot of risk to that. This investment into Tony Pollard with the new coaching staff in town indicates that Pollard is most likely the starter. Spears is probably the same guy he was last year, the same guy that he was coming out of the school. He's a capable receiving back that can play in a committee. And if the starter were to go down in front of him, he can have a pretty large role. Now, based off us not really drafting Pollard last season, I'm not the biggest Tony Pollard guy in the world, but especially at running back where it's so dictated by opportunity. We're more so guessing who the coaches are going to give the ball to. We're guessing on where those touches are going. And at this time, it looks like based off this contract, those are going in the direction of Tony Pollard and not Tyjae Spears. We'll throw the earliest second in here. We'll throw DeAndre Swift in here as well. DeAndre Swift, same thing. I mean, this is someone that gets the guaranteed contract. Of course, I love Roschon Johnson. Hook 'em horns, right? But it's hard to ignore the investment this coaching staff takes. He's clearly a running back that you only want on a contending team. I'm not coming out here and saying that this is someone that we can just be penciling in to be a stud this next year. But seeing the investment, seeing the commitment, knowing that he has upside as a receiver, and also I think this will be the best Chicago Bears offense that we've seen pretty much over the past 5 seasons. I'm fine ranking Swift here, but he's a contending piece. Javonte's a contending piece as well. Javonte's really never been good from a fantasy football perspective, but he's flashed. He's in very bad situations. So maybe if the situation's better this next year, which we don't necessarily know if it will be, but if somehow it is, I think it work. I know some people like Jaleel. I don't think Jaleel's anything special. I think Javonte has so far won the offseason with this team not bringing in a free agent running back, not bringing in Joe Mixon. But it comes down to, can he dodge the NFL draft? And I know you're hearing me say that a lot with these players, and that's why I remember we were saying to sell someone like Tyjae Spears going into free agency. I don't really know who's going to get replaced, but these players like Javonte Williams, they're at risk, but he has dodged the first wave of options. Now, our next tier is going to be David Montgomery. Montgomery will definitely have a role in Detroit. Detroit looks like it'll be a great offense again this next season. They have their offensive coordinator. They have a good offensive line. Montgomery was phenomenal this past year, but I'm just worried about the fact that we ended up seeing Jahmyr Gibbs as the goal line back at the end of the season. Because if Montgomery doesn't have the goal line role, he's not going to have access to any high value touches. Because keep in mind, there's no shot that he's taking the receiving back role from Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll go Brian Robinson at 30. I don't even know why we're doing it. Brian Robinson, Charbonnet. I think Charbonnet is a very safe investment. Brian Robinson still has the first and second down job, even if Austin Eckler is there. And then obviously after this point, we can go through and we'll throw all the veteran backs. I mean, however you want to go through and rank them. Kamara, Mixon, Eckler, Henry. I think that you can go back and forth with these players. And I know it's extremely lazy, but y'all know I am very aware that I'm an idiot. I am very aware that I am by far and away not the smartest guy in the room. So what I would probably look to do with these guys that are like Kamara, Mixon, Henry, Austin Eckler, I would probably be tracking underdog ADP, seeing what the expectations are for these players just this upcoming season. Because really, with this group of guys, that's going to be the only thing that matters, right? You're not going after them for 2 to 3 years. But I think that's all I have for you. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like, subscribe if you played Dynasty. And of course, if you want me to check out your team, give you some advice, make a podcast for you, links in the description, links in the comment section. On flogfantasy.com, you can also find all of our rankings. You find everything, trade calculator, all the premium content from everybody you watch. And yeah, code FLOG, get you 30% off. And yours truly breaking down your team in a podcast. Thank you again. Appreciate y'all. Hope we get to see you tomorrow.